Hey, what's up folks? Jambook Reviews here, and today I'll be discussing the ending of the manga Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. I will be looking at some of Nausicaa's character-defining moments to see if her actions in the final volume were, not to say justified, but in line with her character development across the series. So disclaimers, this is purely an opinion piece and spoilers abound, so let's get to it. So, as you know, the story ends with Nausicaa accidentally committing mass infanticide, destroying the superhumans that were designed to replace the existing population when the world is reborn. This out of context sounds reprehensible, but let's go back to our first conflict and analyze our way forward. Nausicaa's first altercation was between her and the Omu attacking Master Yupa. The Omu are at the heart of the series, and I've noticed most of her decisions are based off her interactions with them. In the first scene, the Omu is trying to chase Yupa out of the forest, and instead of killing it, Nausicaa uses siren shells to distract it and lead it back to the forest. So from this we see that she is not a cruel type of warrior. She springs into action to save the man, but she is opposed to harming the animals in order to do so. If the conflict can be resolved without loss of life, she will opt for that. The next conflict shows what will happen if the stakes are higher. A Pejite refugee ship crashes into the valley and Kushana's Toromikian forces invade them, ready to go to war for the God Key. Nausicaa confronts them in order to defend her people and goes up against Kushana's strongest warrior. She flies into a rage, and before Yupa parts the fight, she delivers a fatal blow on the warrior. When she comes to, we see she is visibly remorseful and regrets the action. And what I take from this is she's not a pacifist. She's willing to fight for a just cause, in this case defending her people. And remember that she joins the Toromikian forces later for this very reason, but she still has trouble when it comes to taking a life. She's put to the test again later on when the Durok capture and mortally wound a baby Omu to lure its comrades into battle with the Toromikian forces. This drops Nausicaa into a moral quandary. Should she kill the baby Omu to prevent it from reaching the battlefield, or spare it because it still has a will to live and risk the possibility of her eunuch dying? She tries to make up her mind to kill it, but quickly realizes she doesn't have the heart to do so, and devises an alternative plan to return it to the Omu, even though there is no guarantee they would not wreak havoc afterwards. So from this I get that she values life, even a single one, even that of an insect. And this wasn't a utilitarian decision because it put many other lives at risk, but it was what she thought was right in that moment. Much later on, after sending her troops home, Nausicaa joins Kushana's forces as a neutral representative of her tribe. And in their journey south, Nausicaa's respect for life is shown in 3 incidents. In the first instance, she saves 2 children of the southern tribes from dying in the miasma. Then she saves an insect and her eggs from being bombed by Kushana's men. In the last instance, she saves one of Kushana's soldiers from death by poisoning. And all these lives she saved can be classified as enemies of her people. The southern tribes are at war with the north, where the valley is located. The insects are of course looking out for their own survival, their animals. Kushana's soldier, if he was ordered to, he would invade the valley, like in the first chapter. But the mere fact that their lives were at risk and she could save them made her do it. She defends her enemies again later on the battlefield when she discovers that Kushana has captured southern tribe civilians that after the war will be turned into slaves. She negotiates with Kushana that she will ride with her into battle against the Durok if Kushana promised to let them go afterwards. So she makes the decision to fight against the southern army to save the captured southern people. And in the battle, when Kushana's forces are making their retreat, she offers herself as a decoy to let them escape. So it's like she's not fighting for any side per se, but trying to find the path that leads to the least loss of life, even through self-sacrifice. So far, I've been focusing on her actions, but let me talk a second about her mindset. Later, when she heads south and finds the temple of the ancient Dark sages, we see the contrast between the northern and southern view of the world. The sages believe that the earth needs to be destroyed in the Dakaisho so it can be reborn. There is no hope for everyone that's here. They're beyond saving. But Nausicaa thinks, why should other creatures suffer because of man's folly? Why should everything suffer for the actions of a few? She doesn't believe in this, rebirth. The life here is worth something. And, in main character style, she convinces them of her point of view. Later on, she, along with Chikuku and Charuka, are searching for survivors while the mole sweeps the land. She encounters the scout Omo, who intends to bring its comrades there to counteract the mold, thus sacrificing themselves to become the seedbed of the new forest. And like I said before, her mindset is that it's not their fault, they shouldn't suffer. But their action moves her, and she decides that since the Omo are willing to sacrifice themselves to prevent the chaos that man created, she will be the human sacrifice, taking all the sins upon herself and become part of the new forest. Stupid, kind of, but I understand the reason. After the Dakaisho, Chikuku, Charuka, and Selm search for and find Nausicaa. She is revealed to be in a kind of limbo because she gazed into the heart of the Omu. Selm says she basically has to will herself to return, because if she is awakened without her consciousness, she will be lost forever. And I think what this means metaphorically is that Nausicaa lost faith in humanity. The world is temporarily saved, but the Omu, her source of hope, they are all dead. So for her to come back, she has to regain that hope. Making the situation worse, she is spiritually attacked by the bad guy, Marlupa, who caused the Dakaisho. She fights him in limbo and defeats him. And this is important. Instead of leaving him in the darkness, because he's responsible for all that's gone bad, she shows compassion and allows him to follow her out when Selm contacts them. And when Selm shows them the edge of the forest, he goes to the afterlife, and she returns to the land of the living. So she regains her faith in humanity by redeeming him. Later on, when Nausicaa and her companions tried to convince the Southerners to give up the war and go home, the Holy Emperor releases the God Warrior on them. Nausicaa turns the tables though when she activates the God Key, takes control of the God Warrior, and ultimately defeats the Emperor. But this drops her into another moral quandary: to kill the God Warrior or not to. Because remember, the God Warrior is the most destructive force on the planet, responsible for the 7 days war of fire. And it's a danger to humanity. But because Nausicaa is the one who activated it, it views her as its mother and will do anything to protect her. She views it as a child who doesn't appear to know right from wrong. She goes as far as naming it Oma, which means innocent. It's hard to judge something that doesn't know right from wrong. So what does she do? Her goal is to go to the Darak capital, Shua, and close the gates to the crypt where the Daikaisho, God Warrior, and all the bad technology came from. So she will use this monster, destructive force for an act of good, closing off the bad technology to the world in the hopes of bringing peace. On their way to shore, Nausicaa's pet Tato dies, and she persuades Oma to land for the burial. They encounter a Hydra, who I'll call the Shepherd, and he convinces the god warrior to give Nausicaa to him because her health is also at risk. The place he takes her is like a Garden of Eden, and when she recovers and breaks his illusion, it is revealed to be the place where the good technology, the knowledge of the world, is kept by the masters of the crypt. And the debate between her, Selm, and the shepherd is important because the truth of the world is revealed and Nausicaa's goals shift. I'll try my best to summarize their arguments. The shepherd reveals that all living creatures on earth have become acclimated to the polluted world. So when the forest has finished cleaning the earth, they will not be able to survive. Nausicaa's rebuttal is that this is not a natural tolerance but manufactured, because of her research. The forest and the Omu were created by the ancient humans to cleanse the earth, then die. This runs contrary to science because nature does not have an explicit purpose. It just continues going as a cycle. And it also runs contrary to the beliefs of the people of their world who consider the forest holy, not man-made. The shepherd then likens Nausicaa to the first holy Dark Emperor he met 1,000 years before. He intended to use the knowledge to change the world for the better, but ended up making it worse, and he believes that Nausicaa will repeat the cycle if she doesn't abandon her quest. But because of the sacrifice of the Omu, Nausicaa believes that the world can still be saved because life still exists there, and changes her goal from closing the gates of Shua to opening them and revealing the whole truth to the people of Earth. In the final chapter, Nausicaa and the Toromican king encounter the master of the crypt. It is a sentient wall of text, kind of like if the Rosetta Stone was a supercomputer. But just like with the Dark Emperors before them, it asked Nausicaa and the king for protection in exchange for the forbidden knowledge to rule the world. But Nausicaa sees through the deception because she knows of its master plan to replace all life on Earth. This brings us to the climactic moment I alluded to at the start of the video, where Nausicaa, in her final self-sacrifice, commands Oma to destroy the crypt with them in it, which inadvertently leads to them destroying the eggs containing the new humans that the supercomputer was going to repopulate the earth with. And I think the reason for their disagreement is a fundamental difference in ideology. The master of the crypt was created 1,000 years before from a world of despair and corruption, with the belief that it is a pure entity, a god. It doesn't know or acknowledge the cycle of life and death. It only believes in its own, self-preservation. Nausicaa is from a world of sacrifice and hope. She knows that death is a part of life. The Oma, Yupa, Teto, and many others sacrificed themselves so that everyone who remained could keep moving forward. Humanity only has a small glimmer of hope to survive. It is uncertain that they will actually be able to live in the clean world of the future. But she still clings to that hope. We've seen it across the series. Anytime a life had the smallest chance for survival, she'd risk hers to save it. So I don't view this as her just destroying another civilization, but as her ensuring the survival of the one that exists, because we don't know if these new humans would be good because they were crafted by the supercomputer, and none of its actions seem to have been for the benefit of humanity. So why would its offspring be different if their purpose is to replace the life that is on Earth now? So Nausicaa, I believe, struck a blow for life, not death, giving the humans and animals that exist a chance at a future, because if she had allowed the crypt to carry out its will, that would mean she believed the planet wasn't worth saving. Thanks for listening.